Hi there guys, this is the Average Joe. I've talked in my last few videos about the fact that I believe an economic crisis is going to come after this COVID period. And today I'd like to talk to you about what are the most vulnerable categories of people, and in my opinion, and I would like you, if you find yourself in one of these categories of vulnerable people in front of a economical depression, I would like you to think about what you can do in order to diminish the effects of a economic depression, of an economic crisis towards you. I would like everybody to realize this is a real possibility. It's not something that is going to happen for sure, it's a possibility, and I would like you guys to think what you can do and please take actions towards that in order to limit the effects of a crisis. Okay, before we start, please give a like to this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that little bell button please, so you can receive further notification. Now guys, who are going to be some of the most vulnerable people in front of a economic crisis? Well, as usual, the people that will have the most to suffer are probably the low-income people that have no savings, that live from a paycheck to paycheck basis, and that have I'm referring to those people that live paycheck to paycheck, have a relative low income, and that have a low skill job, meaning a job that can be done by mostly everybody and that requires little to no training, or okay, not little to no training, but little to no skills. I'm referring here to, I don't know, let's not say street sweepers, because in some cases not everybody is happy to work as a street sweeper, but let's say fast food workers, I don't know, newspaper sellers. You can insert whatever kind of job that you consider to be a low income and no skills needed job. So in my opinion, this is one of the most vulnerable groups of people in front of an economic crisis. Why is that? Well, first of all, if there is somebody that will work for less money, they are replaceable. No skills needed. Second of all, somebody with some skill in a pinch can do a no skill job and have an advantage over somebody that has no skills. Yeah, so this is basically my first group of people that I see very vulnerable in front of a economic crisis. Well guys, The first group of people was something very general, very general. Um, the second group of people I'm going to consider to be a group more specific in our current situation. Well, in front of an economic crisis right now, I consider very vulnerable every person that works in hotels and restaurants. These are businesses that are somewhat on hold right now. Many of them, some of them, are in danger of fading. Not generally big chains, big corporate chains that will probably get government funding, government bailouts, but I'm talking mostly about family-owned businesses that work in the hotel and restaurant sectors. These are generally businesses that the governments forget about and tend not to bail out because there's no big corporate behind them. And this means that I don't know what is the percentage for the States, but in Europe about at least 5% of the population works in one of these type of businesses. So a increase of 5% in unemployment is extraordinarily high, and usually being family-owned businesses means that both husbands are working in the same business, meaning that these people run the risk of having no income whatsoever in their families. So this is why I consider this a risk category for why I consider these people to be at risk in front of an economic crisis. Well, a third category of people that are at risk in front of a economic crisis are actually the people that are already unemployed and are sustained by the social system in their countries. If the shit hits the fan and the social security system can no longer provide, if the social security system is overwhelmed, then these people run a very high risk of not being able to sustain their livelihood. So guys, another group of people that could be very vulnerable in front of an economic crisis are the elderly. Well, after a certain age, we are not able to work as much or as effective as we once were able. That means that if in an economic crisis there are chances, especially if we're talking about more of a blue-collar job, not a white-collar job. In the context of a blue-collar job, where you have to also do physical work, it's harder for elderly person to keep up with a younger person. So, in the context of an economic crisis, there are the chances that employers will prefer to keep younger people in a blue collar job scenario over older people, because the younger people are simply able to work more, not necessarily better, but more. So this is why I consider people more elderly in such job positions to be um, in a more precarious situation. Now, you cannot get yourself younger, you cannot do anything in order to become younger, so I don't know what you could do about that. But, just try save some money. I don't know, before the shit hits the fan. Now, guys, I've talked about a few groups of people that could be more vulnerable in front of an economic crisis. Let's talk a little about what if we find ourselves in one of these groups, and I'm not limiting the list to these groups. I would like you to write in the comment section below who also you think might be more vulnerable in front of an economic crisis. And we should all think about what we can do right now if we haven't done it yet. If we've already done it, we're not we will not find ourselves in one of these groups of people. But we have to think about what we can do, the measures we can take right now in order to limit the effects of an economic crisis. Well, first thing that comes to my mind, is trying to limit spending on not limit spending as to I'm not going to buy food, but do I need a new cell phone? Yes or no? For example, guys, I'm using a iPhone 6. I could go and buy any day a iPhone 11, but I don't need a new iPhone. It does the job pretty good, so why bother? Think about it. When you're going shopping, do you need that thing or do you want that thing? Is it just a wish or is it a need? If it's just a wish, it can probably be postponed until the economy has settled. Now, another thing we can do in order to ensure we are less vulnerable in front of an economic crisis is actually to limit the amount of credit we are using, and to not borrow money in a irresponsible manner. Every time there is a crisis, an economic crisis, the banks will start charging higher interest, and everybody that has large credits, unsustainable credits, is going to get into a deep shit. I mean, just remember the 2008 housing bubble, economic crisis. Many people lost their houses because they had more than one mortgage on their house, and they were hoping on a continuous increase in the economy. They were not even thinking about what would happen if they lose their jobs. So, limiting the amount of irrational spending through credit is a very good thing to do right now. limiting the amount of bills you have to pay each month. That's cutting on unneeded expenses. Well, another thing we could do is become better at what we do. I've said that a at-risk group of people is those that do jobs that require no skills. Well, how about getting some skills? You know, online learning. Many people are in no-skill jobs, are sitting at home right now. Try and get some skills. Be prepared to change your job. Be prepared to relocate. Why not? If we become better at our jobs, I'm not going to say that you become indispensable, but if you are very good at a job, you are less likely to be laid off. So you are more likely to continue to receive a paycheck. And as a final thought, one more thing that you could do in order to limit the exposure you have in front of the economic crisis is simply learn new skills. That gives you the opportunity to entirely change the domain in which you are working right now. So it's simply giving yourself options. I'm not going to preach right now on if your education is at high school level. I'm not going to preach on to getting a college diploma at the age of 50. That wouldn't be realistic. But even old dogs can learn new tricks. That's something I learned from a university professor of mine, that we're never too old to learn new things, and especially in the face of the unknown, we should be prepared to take action. We should be prepared to do what it needs to be done and to give ourselves options. These new skills, I don't know, could be anything. Let's say you're a mechanic. I don't think mechanics are in a at-risk group of people, but let's just imagine that. I'm going to say a hypothetical. Okay, you're not a mechanic. Let's say you are a street sweeper. You sweep the streets. Theoretically, not a great deal of skills are needed, but you learn how to, I don't know, do something, like do some woodworking or something. Simple enough. It requires a little bit of skill, but you have the option to turn your hobby into a profession if needs be. So you have an option to provide for your family, and that is what's important at the end of the day. Now guys, I would like to finish this video by asking you all to just think about what is your exposure level in front of a economic crisis. Just think about, do you have a backup plan? If so, good to you. What are your options in case of an economic crisis, how badly it will affect you, what you can do to limit those effects, and the foremost, be prepared for an economic crisis, and be prepared to take action, to ready yourself, and to do what it takes to keep yourself afloat, even if your job is not longer needed, or if your income is severely diminished or disappears at all. Just think about these things. Are you ready to go into an economic crisis? Yes or no? What you can do in order to be ready. Now, I really hope this video opened your eyes a little bit, made you see that the world is not all sunshine and rainbows, and I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give a like to this video, don't forget, subscribe to my channel, and see you next time, guys.